All right. Hello, and welcome to Regenerative Revolution. So, this is my third episode, and it is my second conversation with you all. To catch everybody up to where we're at, we already had our initial conversation, which I would call session zero or the enrollment conversation. I felt like we were kind of cheating the audience by not recording that. So I went ahead and did that part with my other two clients in our first sessions on chat. Or on live stream. So we're going to have to make sure that we kind of catch the audience up and go over some of that information that you've already given me. I think we can do that still with moving forward from here. We just need to keep in mind that the audience doesn't have all of the information that you've already given me. So to set some context for the format here, currently we are streaming on Twitch. For those of you who are watching it after the fact on YouTube, we're at twitch.tv/regenrevolution. And if you want to join us next time for the live conversation, you can get on there. But this will be uploaded to YouTube after the fact. And with the live audience, what we're going to do is I'm going to have a conversation with Lauren and Jonathan, who I will introduce here in a moment. And we'll just occasionally turn to the audience and ask them, what they think. So far, we don't have an audience right now, and we might not get one. I'll just keep an eye on that. But if we do, I would like to involve the audience if we can in the future. Hopefully, have more of an audience because I'll be actually promoting this. But for now, I'll just kind of keep an eye on the chat rooms. So hopefully we'll get some interaction, but it's fine if we don't. And in the future, there's a Q&A app on here, so people will be able to ask us questions. So we'll be able to just pause and answer questions, as well as ask questions of the audience. So for this conversation, what we're going to do is focus on your mission, vision, and value proposition. And actually, rather than mission, I like to use the word purpose, which I read here in your project description. Looks like you have a purpose statement, and I actually kind of like it. So we'll kind of look at it. And we'll talk about, what makes a good purpose statement. It looks like you've kind of got that figured out, which is good. I don't often see that. So I forgot to mention what's on the screen. So for the audience on the left, you see the bios of Jonathan and Lauren. And then under that, you see a brief project description. That's what they gave me, and also links to their websites. And then on the right, you see my workbook. So I have a consulting package workbook that we're going to be going through, and it has all the questions that I'm going to be asking them. And then I'm going to be taking notes in that document as we go. So the audience can see the notes that I'm taking. It's kind of like they're looking over my shoulder. But Jonathan and Lauren can't see that because I don't want them to be distracted. I want them to just concentrate on answering my questions and just having a conversation with me. But the main purpose of showing that to the audience is that Twitch is an open platform, so people might just drop in at any time and they'll be confused as to what's going on. So if they can just read the question that you're answering and see what notes I'm taking, then hopefully they can get caught up and not just be like, what's going on? Okay, so Regenerative Enterprise Design is the name of the workbook, and we're here to build a beyond sustainable business. So we're on session 1. We're going to set some intentions for this. Okay, so the first question is just a brainstorming question, and here we can do a lot of that background information. So just brainstorming for this enterprise project, what are all of the outcomes that you would like to create with
it? Our primary purpose is to participate in the healing and reestablishment of humans' relationship with the rest of the world's living systems, the biosphere. That's a big outcome.
Yeah.
Long-term, multi-generational outcome. And so if we use that to guide everything, then we start to have very different goals than what a traditional quote unquote business model looks like. And so Lauren and I have been, discussing that. What does it look like? And so we're looking at a social purpose corporation. So one of the things that we're looking for from our coaching sessions is developing, our social purpose corporation, which feels like will give us the flexibility to do the right thing, even if it doesn't look like it's going to produce, cash for shareholders. But it may be producing long-term value, ecological functions, and social functions for future generations.
So that's kind of the grand vision. It's very broad and vague. So I'm looking for more concrete terms, like what are the things that you want to accomplish in the physical world on this property?
Well, the first thing is, how do we structure it legally? So I kind of alluded to that when I talked about a social purpose corporation, that we would want to have a legal structure that's recognized by the current, social structures that we have, governmental structures that we have, tax structures that we have, but that it's leaning into this transitional economy. And so I feel like that's pretty concrete to get on paper and to file for a corporate entity. That feels pretty concrete.
Okay. It's creating a legal structure that leans into the transitional economy. Would that be a fair way to say that?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's why I think perhaps the social purpose corporation is a good blended model for us.
And then I'll answer a little bit more as far as the concrete goals. So the way that we want to reestablish humanity's relationship with the biosphere is through working with the land, being with the land, and having a relationship with the land. So this land was cleared 22 years ago, most recently. I was clear cut. And so all of the old growth and trees that were at the right diameter to be able to be cleared were taken out. So, and it really wasn't replanted very effectively. So we want to be able to restore the ecosystem to a healthy forest. And also we want to be able to offer, like, we're both rite of passage guides. So we'd like to be able to offer, transformational wilderness experiences where you really have a chance to be connected with the landscape. And we've got beautiful old oak trees that were not cleared because that's not a viable species for timber. And we've got bears and we've got coyotes and it's a really magical place. And so it's a perfect place to offer workshops. Jonathan can bring his ecotherapy background and I can bring my naturalist background, and we can both do rites of passage, helping people who are going through transition have a ceremony to let go of whatever is no longer serving them, and bring in what they want to see in their life. So that's a little bit more of a concrete goal.
Okay. So restore the ecosystem to a healthy forest. That seems like a really nice concrete goal, creating an organizational structure, legal structure, and offering some educational, ceremonial, other kinds of programming, right? Seems like you've got kind of,
One of the things to understand in this kind of a process is that I was looking for over a decade for the right kind of land, and the entitlement on these kind of properties includes environmental education. And so in many ways, we're a demonstration site and an environmental education site that doesn't deny the spiritual qualities of being in nature. And so healthy reasons, socially, personally, psychologically, physically, and spiritually, for us to have a better relationship with nature. And so that's where we want to start a center. And it's an educational center in some ways, but a different kind of education.
Okay. Yeah, I'm curious about this education center. So, would you be like curating particular programming that you would want to be on kind of a rotational cycle where you do the same kind of programming on a regular basis? Or is this more the kind of thing where you're really open to people coming in and just doing something and then leaving?
I would say that it's both. We have expertise that we'll bring, and we'll offer some programming that will be consistent. But also, we're hoping to bring in lots of people that have other expertise that, so we can host other workshops.
Okay. So
and Jonathan has a whole list of people that we've already connected with to do this. But because of COVID, we've had to go on hold. But those connections are still there, and we're still building those in hopes to be able to expand what we can offer.
Totally. And just, for the audience, I know we mentioned a few things in our last conversation, so maybe we could just kind of brainstorm a little list again. We talked about permaculture design trainings being out there. What are some of the other ideas for the kinds of programming?
I think social forestry is an important element. Certain kinds of rites of passage or eco-psychology, things like the work that reconnects, Joanna Macy's work, grief rituals, and environmental studies. It could be studies of the particular medicinals here, or how to take care of trees that have specific, infestations or illnesses. This is where I think some of the trainings in forestry, or even, the permaculture principles applied to wildlands, wild tending, traditional ecological knowledge is a very big interest for us. How do we live in better balance with nature? So facilitators who are facilitating not just information, but experiences.
Cool. Lauren, did you have any other ideas to add to that?
We made a whole list, actually. So I think the main one that I want to add is also ancestral skills, also called survival skills, but just the traditional knowledge of how to make a bow drill fire and build a shelter, that sort of thing. Animal tracking. There's so much that we could do, and this is such a perfect place to be able to offer these things.
Awesome. Great.
One of our keen interests is how do we reacclimate our palate to local foods rather than introducing foods that come from another continent. We're interested in supporting people in learning what can they eat locally. What are the berries here? What are the benefits of using the pine trees as a forage for humans? There's a lot of resources that we have that we're not trained to acknowledge, and most people are trained to kind of go into the supermarket and pick up something that's wrapped in plastic. And so we would like to support that kind of wild tending as an expansion of, say, gardening in your backyard or working on a permaculture farm. So in addition to that,
Okay, cool. Okay, so your organization, all these things might be happening on the land, but your organization in particular, what is its role in, like, let's say, curating or organizing these things? Like, how would you describe the function of the organization? What does it do in the grand scheme of all of these things that might be happening on this land?
doing is a transformational wilderness guide, and she's training in transformational coaching and in environmental education. And so she's been running a company for many years, which is her programs are run by Canoe, but she brings in other facilitators to facilitate particular teachings. So she's covering the logistics. So it's as though you were going to a retreat center, except that there's no center, it's on a river. She's covering the insurance. She's covering all the safety requirements, all the permitting, all the food, helping people, learn how to be in that environment. So a lot of what this organization does is it kind of holds the space or the container for safety and for the legal necessities. And then the trainers can focus on, what are they doing? The facilitators can focus on what they're doing. And we're kind of creating the space.
Yeah, so thank you for being so clear on that, Jonathan.
Nice.
Yeah, I think that's a really big part of what we're doing. And because of the River's Path, my other business, I know how to hold the space for other guides, other facilitators, and so that's something, and Jonathan's been working with me with the River's Path for the last year and a half. So, so we've got that background, and then also just being able to offer our skills as well. As I'm a lifelong naturalist, I don't necessarily know medicinals, but I do know edibles. I know what plants we can eat, and I can identify almost everything at Hotlum at this point. And we're learning things every day about how to restore the land, and our intention is to share that, as well as hopefully eventually to be a model for some of the surrounding lands, private owners, as well as the national forest land that also has not regenerated effectively after being clear cut.
Okay, cool. I mean, there was something that you said about we'll bring our own, skills. I think it's important to distinguish between the organization and you as a human being. Like, they're not the same thing. Right. So,
that's
right. What the organization does versus what you have to offer the project might be different things, So like you might just be another facilitator who comes in and does a program, but the organization isn't doing that. You're doing that as a facilitator, right? The organization is just there to hold context for you to do that, as well as all of the other facilitators. Does that make sense? Does that seem like the setup that you're looking for?
That's a big edge for me. I identify myself by what I do in my business. So maybe that's something that you can help us distinguish.
Right. Because you have to consider this organization may continue after you're gone. So if you set it up so that the organization is you, it probably will fail after you leave.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's something I know I could use some support with. Maybe Jonathan too, but yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I'm glad I can help. But what you said is just absolutely perfect. Covering logistics, insurance, safety requirements, permitting, food, context setting. So facilitators can focus on their own programs, right? I mean, it's that might be it. I feel like there might be some things that you guys are doing to improve would improving the land, planting trees and whatnot just be considered one of the programs, one of the things that's happening that your organization is facilitating, or would that be like a core ongoing function of the organization?
So I can speak to that.
Please do.
I believe that what we're really doing is an experiment in regenerative culture. And that part of a regenerative culture, or even a sustainable culture, is stewarding and tending the earth. I think that's one of the reasons why humans exist on this planet, is that we're here, and it's an ongoing project. It's not like, oh, I've done that and I can walk away forever. This is an ongoing cyclical relationship.
Right.
And so it's going to be an ongoing part of whatever we do to survive on this planet as a species. simultaneously, it is only one component of what we're doing.
Right.
And so we're hoping to be engaged with others who are reestablishing a culture of care, a culture that is rooted in compassion and understanding and transparency. And so people can come here and study, but our hope is that they take it back to their own communities, and that this can kind of go viral, for lack of a better word. And so we just want to be a hub, or perhaps someday just a spoke in a great wheel, or a thread in a web of communities all over that are tending to the earth and tending to one another as a practice.
Okay.
I'd like to add a little bit to that too.
Okay.
If that's okay, which is, in addition to that, I think a lot of places where these kinds of workshops happen, people come and they visit, and they learn something and they go home, and there's not really this deep, lasting connection to place that I think is a really core goal of what we want in creating a regenerative, deep connection to place. We really want people to not just like come and visit Hotlum and then go home, and then it's just this distant memory, but really we want a deep, visceral connection to the land. At Hotlum, it is a magical place, and it doesn't just belong to us. Just because it's in Jonathan's name does not mean that the land belongs to us. It belongs to all of us who come to visit and come to be a part of that land, and to really have our hand in restoring the place. So yeah, that feels really important. I want people to fall in love with Hotlum, and want to come back and want to, and feel that like tug on their heartstrings even when they're not there.
Okay.
And perhaps we belong to the land rather than the land belonging to us. Maybe we belong to the land.
Okay. I appreciate you sharing those sentiments, and I think they can inform how we set things up, how you set things up. But we still need to think in concrete terms. So I could see it going both ways. To fulfill that sentiment, it could be that you do want the organization to oversee the restoration as a whole, to keep some kind of overarching coordination and facilitation and consistency with whatever processes and projects are going on the land. I mean, you can't do everything at once. You're going to have to take it off in bite-sized chunks. So are you going to replant this area first or that area first? Are you going to make a little area for around the camping area with certain kinds of plants and landscaping, or like little projects that you can take on to improve different areas of the property. If you want your organization to manage that and be in charge of that, I mean, it makes sense to do that. It also makes sense to have other people come in and take responsibility for pieces of that, because then they have ownership over it. So, a person or a group could come in and say, I'm going to restore this half acre or something,
So I would say that it's both and. I mean, we need to have a forest management plan that is the overarching goal. That's one of the first things that need to happen as far as restoring the land. And then from that, then we know what the different aspects of the plan are. And then people could take them on. In particular, like, we'd love to connect with people that, students or scientists or whoever that maybe can handle some of the monitoring and test, soil testing and, things like that that are not our expertise. So for sure, we want people to take ownership of parts of it. But also, I would say that it's a central part to what we're offering. And we would be the ones holding the overall forest management plan. Let's see what Jonathan says, though.
Okay.
He might have something.
Great.
Let's be real about this. I think you're trying to have us be grounded as well as visionary. We're working with a professional forester, a registered professional forester, is a licensed individual in the state of California. We have to work with experts because they're legal requirements. We'll be working with attorneys. We'll be working, with the county development department to know what we're actually entitled to do at any given point in our plan. Well, simultaneously, we want to create a collaborative culture where, say, students can come here and they can participate in a particular project. We've been in conversation with some nonprofits that have groups of youth that want to learn about forestry. And so they might come and take on a particular, project, but it's being ultimately overseen by our registered professional forester and funded perhaps by funding from the state. There's funding for fuel load reduction called the Forest Improvement Program, CFIP, the California Forest Improvement Program. There's all kinds of resources available to support public involvement. So we would like to have, citizen sciencery, them come up and do, say, the California Native Plant Society could do a native plant survey as volunteers, but we will probably also be working with our professional botanist who has a PhD in, biology and wildlife and botany. So it's an and also. The professionals and all of, we want little kids coming up here and learning about the butterflies. We want to work with, the pollinator species and do that, perhaps with our friends at Pollinator Posse. So it's an and also.
Okay, hold on. Typing this out. Okay, so I've got, you're going to work with a registered professional forester, the government, and other like designers, botanists, other professionals to create a forest development plan. You'll also work with the California
Forest management.
Okay, sorry. Yeah. Sometimes when I'm
I think that's what it's called.
Trying to hold too much in my head, and words just get blurred. Okay. And you'll work with the California Forest Improvement Program and other organizations to collect resources or to get resources. Does that make sense?
Yeah, there's lots of government agencies. The National Resource Conservation Service is a conversation we've been having for over a year, and we have an application in with them. We work with the California University Extensions Program. So there's other organizations that are much larger than us that are supporting us. And we also want to support a grassroots effort. We'd love to have, a school program come here and get to go for a nature hike. Or maybe they do some restoration work and learn about, what it's like to live in a fire ecology. And so it's a top-down and a bottom-up process.
Okay, and then you're also going to facilitate people taking ownership of fulfilling parts of that forest management plan, right?
That's our hope. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yay. So I know what your organization does. Okay. So describe how it operates. Like, what are the values and standards that you want this organization to uphold? I know you've said a lot of that, but I'm wondering if we can like kind of boil it down into a few bullet points.
I think one of the things that we're leaning into is sociocracy as a form of governance. I think we want to have a more egalitarian and collaborative process, while simultaneously being grounded in that there are rules and regulations that are there for a purpose. And, we're going to be part of a larger governmental system, but internally, we would like to have practices such as council practice and, collective inquiry as a way of developing this new culture of participatory democracy. And I think that something like sociocracy is going to be really important for us.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
And Jonathan has a lot more experience with different forms of governance than I do. So and I know that that's part of the background that you have, Jacki. So I'd like to learn from you on that.
Awesome.
And more effectively facilitate that, within our organization.
Cool. I hate that I drop words sometimes. What was that you said, Jonathan? You said council, and then you said something else.
Collective inquiry.
Collective inquiry.
Yeah. I think that for us, a big core value is celebrating diversity and supporting diversity. And whether that's within our human family and the diversity of people and their different orientations, their different, social, classes that they come from, their ethnicities, their perspectives on many things, age. These are all really important things to celebrate in diversity, but also our core value is to include the more than human world in our decisions. Asking ourselves, what would those beings who live here with us want to see happening here? And include them in the conversation in the best way we can learn how to do.
Great.
So that kind of diversity is a really core value for us.
Yeah, I like that. Totally. Would you say regeneration is one of your core values? Or do you have a different word you'd like to use?
Of course.
Yeah, we call ourselves an Eco-Regeneration Camp. So it's definitely a camp where people can be close to nature, living outdoors. But it's really about our belief that if we don't start regenerating the ecosystems in our local areas, we are headed toward a worse mass extinction that is already, in our future. So it's time to regenerate the ecological systems that support life on the earth.
And I don't know if you want to call it carbon sequestration or building soil or something like that. What do you put in terms of like how you improve the land itself?
That's one of the ways.
There's also the hydrological cycle. There's the atmospheric cycles. Being forest land, I think soil and trees and habitat for the pollinators and for the other apex predators to the chipmunks and squirrels, all of these systems are interrelated. And so it's really hard to be holistic. And I think we're trained to try to divide things up and slice things out. But we're trying to think as holistically as possible.
Yeah, sure. I'm just trying to kind of expand on regeneration and kind of what all it includes. So like building soil and improving habitat, increasing biomass.
That's a big part of it, sure. And then there's also, the relationship between humans and the land, regenerating, growing that connection, for me is a central part to what regenerative means, because we're not just going and like restoring the land because we're going out and visiting and fixing things, but it's really about in having a relationship with the place, with the land. We are regenerating ourselves, our psyche, our well-being, our knowing of who we are. And there's a reciprocal relationship. It's not just one way of us coming in and being the ones that are saviors going to save the land, but because it's not just that, because the land also saves us.
Yeah, I really love the term regenerative or regeneration because it has all of those meanings. And in this bullet pointed list, I kind of want to maybe address that like spiritual, the connection issue. Is there like one or two words that you would use to describe that that connection you want to foster?
Well, we talk about eco-spirituality and the sense of the immanent, meaning what is right here, right now. It's not something that's transcendent, but it is rather an immanent experience of life as a spiritual practice.
And, you know, it's hard to really put this in. I don't know the right word to if you want me to put this into 2 or 3 words.
I like eco-spirituality. I mean,
yeah. If you need to use a word for it, that'll be fine.
Okay.
Because but for me it's not about words, it's about a feeling, about this like visceral connection, in like embodied connection, and relationship. I could say relationship, that's another.
In eco-psychology, we talk about foundational attachment. It's the attachment to place in terrapsychology. It's this idea that we love and care for and have a relationship that's important to us. Just like a mother-child relationship or a parent-child relationship, you know, we have a relationship with all the other beings that share this, you know, living layer on Earth.
Awesome. Okay, I don't want to make this list too long, but there's another thing that I've heard you say that I don't feel like is captured here fully, which is this how you want to regenerate people as far as like helping people, like improving their lives in some way, with like providing livelihoods. Like you're working with all of these trainers who, you know, they teach courses or do these programs for a living. So you're providing them with some livelihood opportunities in this context where you've got this egalitarian structure. I don't know if there's another word you want to add for like just improving people's quality of life or in some other way.
Well, one thing I'll say is that Siskiyou County there's a lot of unemployment, a lot of just impoverished communities within the county, and you know, and there's not a lot of jobs in the county. Like there really aren't, and so one of the things we really would like to do is work with the people that live in the area, not just like bringing experts in from other areas, although that will happen too, but also bringing in and highlighting the expertise that we have in our community, in our county, and you know, offering trainings that will provide for you know, the ability to gain employment doing you know, some of the work that they learn how to do at Hotlum. I'll let Jonathan talk more.
I think this is, you know, where we lean into some of the ideas of Hazel around social forestry. And also we're in, you know, really a deep exploration with John Liu. And he speaks a lot about basing an economy on ecological function. And so rather than on fiat currency and on, you know, being rewarded for moving capital around it, and you know, the whole in, you know, debtification or usury kind of debt that drives our economy, perhaps there's a way of reestablishing an economy that's related to ecological functioning. And so if we can support future generations in learning how to make more abundance for everyone and having an economy that's not driven by lack, but is driven by abundance of food, of water, of clean air, healthy soils, abundance of wildlife, and also other, you know, animals that we've had a relationship with domestic animals for thousands of years. That kind of abundance, I think, is a true reciprocal economy. And it's more what you pay forward than what you extract. And so I think that's one of the big conversations we're in. How do we establish an economy that's based on abundance and is founded on ecological function? What is the ecological function that we provide?
Yeah, I like both of those. So I heard something that could be summarized maybe as an abundance economy. I also heard something I would describe as right livelihood. Is one or the other of those more what you're going for?
I think that those have certain connotations.
Uh-huh.
Right livelihood to me sounds like almost a Buddhist concept.
Uh-huh.
And I think that when we use the word economy, we have become jaded to believe, just kind of automatically we assume that that means a cash economy of some sort of capitalistic system. And I would say more based on ecological functioning is the term that I'm using. Like, what is the ecological function that this person or this piece of land or this water source or this atmospheric exchange is providing? And that is true abundance. Life is true abundance. And those elements that provide for that abundance. And it really has very little to do with the kind of economies that the humans make up. It's the system that the entire biosphere runs on and we actually live on, ecological functioning.
Okay. I mean, we could use ecological or functioning as a principle and then describe that as some sort of like creating abundance for our community and life and livelihoods and life in general, something like that.
Right, sounds because I think one of our real fundamental values is to be aware of our anthropocentric view, that we tend to think in terms of what's okay for humans. And it's one of my biggest criticisms with the permaculture movement is that it still denies the ecological functioning and importance of other beings on the planet. And so it's a big, big paradigm change for us to include in our models of abundance biodiversity, because we live in an extractive lack mentality. The paradigm of extraction and debt and lack. And I think we can move toward a paradigm where diversity and abundance is seen as wealth.
And I will mention that I think some schools of permaculture design are moving into that because the permaculture design community is one of the communities that's really embracing ecosystem restoration, at least in the in our country. So there's a lot of gifts.
Yeah, it's evolving.
We are evolving.
Yeah.
That's a good thing. This is an evolution and a revolution.
Yeah, cool. All right, let's keep moving. Where are we at? Ooh, we're running out of time. Yeah, I'm not sure how many sessions it's going to take to get through all of this. I had 2 sections in this session that we're doing right now, and we still have 3 questions left. So I don't know if we're going to get to part 2. We might wait until next time. So next would be to brainstorm words and phrases that describe the most important value that your enterprise creates. So kind of focusing in on that one thing. So this list of words could be used for like creating a tagline or in your copy. It's useful to have kind of this list of just the punchiest words that really describe what you have to offer. Normally at this point I would be, building towards a purpose statement, but it sounds like you guys really like the purpose statement that you have, and it's actually kind of meets my criteria. So we might not need to create a new purpose statement, but we might as well go ahead and do some listing of words because it's really valuable for like copywriting and marketing.
I feel like a lot of the words we've already used. So I'm not
Uh-huh.
sure. I'm not sure what else I want to add to what we've already discussed with all of the other questions you've asked. Jonathan may have some. He's really great with words. So.
I mean, I think we come back to this word relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be used in many, many contexts. But, I'm trained as a relationship therapist.
Mm-hmm.
That's my academic background.
Mm-hmm.
And also in eco-psychology, it's the understanding of humanity's relationship with, and how, we are in a relationship with the rest of the ecological system. And so I think relationship is really, really important. How are we with other humans? How are we with other beings? How are we in nature? How are we with, even if you're, growing food, the relationship you have with what you're growing actually changes the nutritional value of what you're growing.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's so important. And so there's something about, the heart of that, the emotional caring, compassion that we bring to our relationships. And I don't know that we've captured that quite yet.
Well, it's in your purpose statement, so you've got the word relationship in there, and I'm just going to actually, so I can see it, copy and paste it into here, because I kind of like it. It's slightly vague, but it's short. I like that it's short. I mean, just to give my spiel on purpose statements, I prefer to use the word purpose rather than mission, because most mission statements you'll come across aren't short statements. They're like several paragraphs long, and they tend to be kind of a laundry list of all of the values that the founders have and want to create. And that might be a valuable exercise for the founders to do, just to get clear on what it is they're trying to do. But after that point, I feel like it's not very useful. It usually gets shoved into a drawer or maybe posted up on the wall, but very few people in the organization tend to pay attention to it, or even read it. And if they do, they're just like, yeah, whatever. They don't really go, ooh, I need to pay attention to that. I need to incorporate that into everything I do. But if you have a nice, short, punchy statement that people can actually remember, then you can use it as a tool, and you can actually say it like in conversation. You can say, are we participating in the healing of humanity's relationship with the biosphere? Does this participate in the healing of humanity's relationship with the biosphere? Does this decision facilitate us participating in the healing of humanity's relationship with the biosphere? And as a founder or a CEO who's championing the purpose, I would see part of your job is repeating that as many times as possible throughout the day to whoever you can, because that just ingrains in everyone who's involved what it is you're trying to accomplish, especially when you have an egalitarian, horizontal kind of organization. Everybody needs to know what they're there to do. If people aren't clear on that, they'll all be going in different directions, pulling the ship, in different directions, and you don't make forward progress. So it's important to me to have that like clear, concise statement that you actually use. Right? Does that make sense? Is that where you guys were coming from when you created that statement?
Yeah, absolutely. And we actually, I personally had a big awakening and epiphany guided by an indigenous teacher about the word mission. And that it for many comes across as militaristic, colonizing, kind of fundamentalist. And a lot of people have been really, really harmed by missionaries.
Mm-hmm.
And so changing it to purpose was much better framing of what we're doing. And we talk a lot about, helping people find their purpose or their ecological niche, as Bill Plotkin likes to call it. What is our ecological niche? And sometimes I wonder if the word biosphere is a little highfalutin, but I wanted to really encapsulate a holistic word in that.
Yeah, I think it's great. I think you've actually got a good purpose statement, so I don't want to mess with it. I thought I was going to have to really help you wordsmith something, but it looks like you've done a good job.
Yeah, I mean, I think we actually used that sentence a lot when we're describing Hotlum and what our vision is and what our purpose is. I use it all the time when people say, "What are you doing at Hotlum?" That's so. Yeah, I'm happy with it.
Cool, great. So yeah, we can move on. We're kind of running out of time. So, okay, what would happen if your enterprise fulfills this purpose? As in, what would change in a measurable way?
We might do regenerative work to heal our ailing planet.
And I think the measurable would first of all be a measurable change in the healing of Hotlum, of the land there. That would be one thing that would be measurable. And then also, as far as measurable, we could keep track of like what how many people have come to visit and what they've done in their communities when they've gone home. So I think that would be another measurable.
Okay. Fair when they get home. I mean, what I'm going for is actually like a 1-paragraph vision statement. So I feel like we could add a little bit more to this, like the vision of what would be created if you fulfill your purpose. If we can get a little bit more concrete than just, like healing the relationship.
Yeah, I think, Jonathan, we've written some stuff about this already, haven't we?
I don't know about we, but I've been writing about it for years.
Right. Maybe you could share some of the stuff.
I've got lots and lots written on this. I don't know how useful it is for people, but I talk about 15 generations. And the reason I talk about having a vision for 15 generations is because I subscribe to a traumatogenic model in which at some point in history, humanity started having a fundamental split from their experience of immersion in nature and being part of. And our experience became truncated. And 15 generations is important because currently there's been some scientific research showing the epigenetic expression of trauma in worms lasts for 15 generations. So we talk about 7 generations, but how do we actually change the neurophysiology of humanity to where we're reperceiving our relationships with whatever you want to call those elementals? I have friends who talk about the fairies. I have friends that talk about how the biome in their soil becomes part of their biome in their gut. In a synergistic relationship with everything that's living. And so healing that relationship where we are not traumatizing the other beings is an incredibly important and long-term multi-generational process to heal what is this epigenetic expression of aggression.
Yeah.
And we see it at the national level, we see it at the global level, we see it in communities. And so it's a way of being nonviolent in our relationships with the more than human world. And that's a lot for some people to swallow, like to even hear that.
Yeah.
But that's the long-term goal, is that we actually create another species almost. The perceptual neurological system and physiological system is more open to perceiving their synergistic interrelatedness or interbeing, as Thich Nhat Hanh calls it.
Yeah, I totally, and it's funny how you can talk about the same idea in, really magical terms, like with the fairies and whatnot, and you can talk about the exact same thing in super scientific terms, like with the soil biome, as you mentioned. But I totally agree that trauma does carry down genetically. They've shown that genes carry memories, and it makes sense that kind of that's why we have all of these violent tendencies, which don't really serve us in today's society. But our ancestors were fighting 2-ton bears and saber-toothed tigers, for one thing, which isn't really necessarily our fault, or anything. It's just kind of part of why we're an aggressive species. And then there's this like trauma. My president of my university, at Guy University, Andrew, he thinks that it started when there was a drought or a flood, something, some big world catastrophe that happened, many thousands of years ago. And I've heard a lot of theories about how there may have actually been a big flood about 30,000 years ago or something. But humanity was kind of thrown into a desperate situation for generations, where we maybe were forced into some sort of agriculture because our natural foraging habitat was destroyed. I mean, it might not have been our fault. There might have been a global catastrophe that forced us to become more aggressive with nature and take more control of it if we couldn't find enough food, something like that. But yeah, like I think that is kind of ingrained in us, and that it is a long process to change that if we do want to get back into a more happy, healthy relationship with the natural environment.
Yeah, and I just want to give a plug for Guy University and Andrew. And we've been on phone calls with him in our ecosystem restoration camps movement in California. And we have friends who have graduated from the program. And these are the kind of things that we all need to partake of. And if we can do it in small bits at a place like Hotlum, or if we can take on a whole graduate program, it doesn't really matter in my mind. A little bit goes a long way. And it's just so wonderful to be able to talk to you and to be able to dream into this more beautiful world.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And so this is part of the business plan, and I think it's okay to be a little magical.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we use words like fairies or, the different nature protectors, and they're a reality. We just don't perceive them.
Mm-hmm.
And so is our gut biome. It is a reality that we have all these little critters that make us up and actually change the way we think and feel about life.
Yeah.
It's a scientific reality. We're measuring it.
Yeah, our gut biome changes our attitude and our mood.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So blessed be that we have this intelligence, and we also have an intelligence in our heart. Mm-hmm. And so may our business plan, may our organization listen to both of those intelligences. That would be a real goal for us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Awesome. Thank you. Well, we're coming down to the end of time. I also know supposedly we have 2 viewers, so I just want to say hello to the viewers and give them a chance to ask any questions in the chat if they want, or just say something. I'll give you a second if you want to just say hello. You don't have to. Okay, I don't say anything. But thanks for joining us. And if you would like to learn more, you can tune in next time, and we'll keep doing this. Also, I have a Patreon, patreon.com/regenerative-revolution, that you can join to have more direct conversations with me and get some behind-the-scenes content. And then you can visit their websites, which I've got here on the bottom left corner at hotlum.org, and the River's Path, theriverspath.org. So thank you for joining me, and thank you too. Is there anything that you two want to say before we go?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to, express my gratitude to all the beings that are around me, the manzanita and the ponderosa and all the bugs and bees and the ground that I'm standing on and the sky above me, and to my great community of people that I've met through Facebook. Thank you, Jacki, for being a host to this wonderful conversation. And I hope that I get to meet all of you in person someday. And we can have a real deep relationship.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. I'll talk to you next time.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Bye.
Okay.